Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today, we're taking a closer look at a really evocative piece. It's titled Far From Home, Hostel Nights and Lingering Silence.
Hmm.
And our goal here really is to explore that whole emotional roller coaster of moving away from home, for the first time, especially for students.
Yeah.
And what this source material tells us about those quieter moments, the defining silences in that big life change.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is how it zooms in on the stuff people don't often talk about when leaving home.
Right.
It's not just, oh, new city, new college. It's more about that quiet face-off with silence itself.
Hmm.
Really gets to the heart of missing things, like things you didn't even realize were anchors.
Like what specifically?
Well, the piece mentions missing your mother's food, that
Mhm.
specific comfort,
Mm.
and maybe a father's presence, just knowing they're around, that childhood safety net.
That's a great point. And the source jumps right into that, doesn't it? It paints this picture of leaving home not just being about geography, but, as it says, learning to live with silence.
Exactly. That phrase really stuck with me.
It talks about those quiet nights where the kind of lack of the usual home sounds becomes almost loud, It makes an empty room feel heavy.
Yeah, palpable.
And it says this is for every student who ever missed their home and cried silently at night. So, what is that silence made of, according to the piece?
Well, like I was saying, it's definitely more than just no noise. It's framed as the absence of, well, comfort,
Yeah.
deep comfort.
Okay.
The source specifically uses that term, Ghar, Khaana, home-cooked food. It's such a potent symbol, isn't it?
It really is. It's more than just the taste.
Absolutely. And missing a father's presence. These aren't trivial details. They represent that bedrock of security and familiarity that's suddenly gone.
Yeah, jarringly absent, as you said.
Right. And that deep longing, that ache, is kind of central to the whole experience the piece describes and shapes those early lonely nights.
But interestingly, that feeling of absence, that void, the piece suggests it's not just about loss. It kind of becomes a space for something new to grow.
Yes, that's the pivot, isn't it?
Yeah, this is where it gets deeper. It talks about the experience not just as loneliness, but as a mix, like growth and nostalgia. And it explores how we slowly build our own strength.
Mm.
So it's not just about what you've left behind, but it's really looking at what you gain by processing all this intense emotion.
Right. It implies that really feeling those things,
Mhm.
the homesickness, the sadness, acknowledging them, maybe even learning to express them, is actually part of becoming independent.
It's not something to just push through or ignore.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And if you think about it from maybe a psychological angle,
Hmm.
these quiet moments, feeling homesick, reflecting alone, they're not just passive states you endure, they're active.
Active how?
Well, the empty hostel room, the quiet nights, they become these like arenas for self-discovery, for forging resilience.
It's like a crucible.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah.
The piece shows how wrestling with homesickness, even the really vulnerable stuff like, silent tears, it forces you to look inward and to develop this kind of inner strength you might not have known you had. It's an active building process, not just suffering.
Okay, so wrapping this up a bit, what's the takeaway here for you, the listener, whether you've been through this or maybe you're about to face it?
Hmm.
We've seen how that empty room, those quiet nights, they aren't just voids, they're actually stages,
Yeah.
where craving Ghar or shedding those silent tears become these really significant emotional milestones.
Yeah.
The source really reframes them as necessary steps on the path to becoming your own person.
And broadening that out, the big question it sort of leaves us with is, how does actually living with that silence, really grappling with that intense homesickness, how does that directly lead to building your own strength?
Okay.
This deep dive seems to suggest that those solitary moments, the ones often filled with nostalgia, are the very places where people slowly, maybe unconsciously at first, forge their resilience.
Interesting. Learning to cope, to self-soothe almost.
Exactly. Learning to navigate that discomfort, face your inner world, and find that capacity for self-support. So thinking about all this, what really stands out to you about how that deep longing for home can, in the end, lead to